Good morning, you're watching Morning at NTV with me, Flavia, and I'm very keen on us as Ugandans, our economy sustaining itself. I know when we spoke to the executive director of KCCH, she said, at the end of the day, can we try and put in place solutions for where Kampala can sustain Kampala, where we don't have to go to, foreign investors to come and support Kampala, where in the long run, not today maybe, but in 10 years or so, because I know that by 20 or 2040 will be 10 million in Kampala alone, according to the World Vision. So we need to work on a way to being sustainable. So as we get into the State of Nation address later on today, I thought I'd invite someone to talk to us about trade and industry. They're supposed to be getting in the next financial year 158.2 billion shillings. And we don't want to debate on whether it's a lot more or a lot less from last time. We want to talk about whether it's enough, whether the right policies are in place, whether we're working towards trade and industry supporting the economy. 10 trillion is going to debt repayment, so there's a question of debt that will also come in our discussion. Joining me from the Southern and East African Trade Information and Negotiations Institute, Siatini Jane Nalunga. You're actually the country director. Good morning.
Good morning.
We've been having a juicy conversation off air, so let's try and deliver the same on air. So Siatini, you do everything from policy analysis to recommendations. Just briefly start with what Siatini does.
Okay. Good morning, viewers. I'm happy to be here to talk about trade and industry and cooperatives. These are some of really forgotten issues. I have been hearing people talking about we want health, we want education,
security,
we want security,
energy,
we want energy, we want jobs. And we're saying here, where do we get that from? Okay, let me first talk about Siatini. Siatini is Southern and Eastern African Trade Information and Negotiations Institute. We have an office here in Uganda, an office in Nairobi. We work on issues of trade, we work on issues of tax, we work on issues of the economy, bread and butter issues. And we believe Uganda can trade its way out of poverty and into the middle income status.
Which we are still fighting to achieve. It doesn't look like we don't want to achieve it, but there's so many things that have to be in place. So just to note that your recommendations and policy analysis is not directly to the trader, it's to the stakeholders,
To the stakeholders, to the ministries, to government.
The ones who set standards as well. Maybe we should start there. For the people who are trading, when we dealt with agriculture in our budget review, some of these traders were saying, they tell me about standards, but I don't really know. I haven't looked at this document that says the standards should be A, B, C, D. But you shouldn't even just look at the trader. There's also the producer of these goods. Do they know the standards of what they should be producing?
I think that's really, really important if we are to trade our way out of poverty. Because if you are trading, you have to trade your goods in a certain market. And the market has standards. If maize, the moisture content has to be clear, So standards are very, very critical. But the challenge also, again, the amount of money, which are given to trade and industry. Because trade and industry has the Uganda National Bureau of Standards. And it's supposed to do that. It's supposed to make sure that we produce according to certain standards. If we are taking goods to the EU market, to any market, maize, even on our market here.
Because we're still producing to consume, but there's also standards for consumption.
And standards are also important for health purposes. So standards are very, very important. Recently, government had to impose a self-ban of our produce going to the EU because we were not reaching the standards. So standards are very, very important if we are to export or maybe to put our products out there and also on the domestic market.
So these standards, I know UNBS, that's their role. They're supposed to and ideally set standards, but also inform these traders about the standards, because there should be an information arm, because there's having the standards on paper, but it also goes back to the quality of what I'm producing on the market. Who's giving me this produce? You know about wealth creation.
Yeah, sure.
We're getting in a cup like this seeds, and by the time we plant, the quality was bad. Do I go back to government and say it's your fault?
Not really, but the whole issue of quality, again, the UNBS needs, I don't want to hold a brief for trade, but I'm an interested party.
Good.
Because I see all these problems of job creation, of industrialization. The issue is that we need to put our eyes on the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives.
Tell me about creating jobs. Perhaps let's look about linking production first to the market. Before we talk about producing for the market. I think we've actually touched on producing for the market. Linking production to market. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, because Uganda is an agricultural country.
Yes.
Statistics, they say 70% of our people are in agriculture. And for me, I think that's where we should start.
Okay.
But agriculture on its own, we just put people in poverty. And I tell people that some of us who don't produce are selfish because we want cheap food. We don't look beyond cheap food. But if agriculture is to transform this economy, we need to link it to industry, manufacturing, value addition, and then trade. You know, those backward and forward linkages are important if we are to get out of poverty. So we need to produce for the industries, add value, and then export. But even when we are exporting our raw, for example, vegetables and beans, we need to produce for a certain market. Our agriculture is what we call agriculture of affection, you know. You need, oh, this is a nice bean. Where did you get it from? Oh, and it's so nice. You plant it. In the same garden, you get another bean. Oh, this one is also nice. You plant
Your tomatoes look nice.
Nice. Where did you get it? You plant them, you know. So we need to plan for the market. If we get the market right, our economy will be right. And the beauty, because some people will say, what about food security? Because
I was going to tell you, as you talk about that, some standards of those nice beans will be okay for consumption, yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yes.
So the beauty is that producing for the market and producing for food security are not mutually exclusive.
Okay.
We can be able to produce because today, food crops have become cash crops. Yes. So we can be able to produce for a market, but also for consumption. But now we are producing for consumption, and the remainder is what we put on the market, which is a bit unsustainable. Okay,
so tell me about, we've talked about standards, we talked about, I think, off-air, something you're very passionate about, liberalizing the economy. You said this is something we need to check because it's no longer working. Open the markets does not work for us anymore.
Yeah, because, you know, we undertook a number of policies which were not ours, which were, you know, recommended to us by IMF, World Bank. Yes. In the 1980s, they are called the structure adjustment programs, where they told us you have to liberalize your economy, open up, you have to deregulate, you know, government get out of development, you have to privatize, that private sector is efficient. So we have been following these policies, but they haven't worked. Government has to play a key role in development. The poorer the country is, the more important that government plays that role. And government is now doing that, because when you look at UDC, Uganda Development Corporation, yes, government is putting money there to nurture industries, which is very good. I commend government, but it should go on. But this open liberalization, and the president has been talking about it, that we are supermarket. You can't grow an economy when you are consuming, when you are a supermarket.
Everyone can come in, everyone can sell anything, even if we are actually producers of the same thing at the same quality.
Exactly. Yes. And this is what happened to our textile industry. Government pulled out, they liberalized, now everything is coming in. Chinese, second-hand clothes, and so on. And like we were discussing here, it's so difficult to reverse. Yet when we are talking about job creation, those are the quick wins, the low-hanging fruits. You grow the cotton, you make yarn, you make clothes.
Because I'm looking at the screen here, we have everything from jewelry to shoes to clothes. Some of these things obviously can be made here. But of course we're checking the issues of quality and some
those ones can be worked on.
Those can be worked on.
Recently, you see the the biteng is the tie and dye.
Tie and dye, yes.
Do you
yes,
know
yes.
we get tie and dye from China? Tie and dye. Yet this can be done by the women. Tie and dye. I see women used to make these chair backs, which you put on chairs, on the table mats and all that. It's gone. So we are losing out. And then we are here crying, there are no jobs, there are no jobs. But like the president says, you know, when I listen to the president, when he's talking about the economy, he's so passionate about these issues. We are exporting jobs,
yes.
we are supermarket. But when it comes to saying, you know, this is what I'm going to do, I don't see that, you know. I don't see that. And this is what we need to engage on. What do we do?
We can't, obviously, as we've talked about, reverse it. Some way, China and the whole lot are giving us, and they're giving us not just products, they're giving us labor as well. And we have all that. We can produce, but maybe not at the same level. So I think we're talking about this, the concept of producing and say, we shouldn't compete with you. If we're producing and we can produce up to 90%, give us the 10%.
Exactly. You know,
but can that work?
It can. We just need to look at what's our competitive advantage, you know. Because, for example, if we are producing granite paste, you know, we get granite paste, peanut paste from even the US here. We get tomato paste from all over.
From all the countries, yes.
We get beans, tinned beans here.
Spices. You're the smallest things.
Smallest things. You know, in trade, it's difficult to say don't bring. You know, it creates trade wars.
Yes.
What's happening in China. But what you can do, you can be able to put tariffs, more taxes, you know, on such things. So if, Flavia, you want to eat paste, granite paste from the US, you pay through the nose. That's up to you.
Then you
and the government, and government is also getting some taxes out of it. But it isn't competing with what we are
producing here at home.
Producing
yes.
at home.
Yes,
So that's what we can do, because there are things which we need in the economy. We don't produce laptops. We need them cheaply.
Yes.
But things which we produce, we should grow the economy around that, create jobs around that.
Okay, let's talk about the debt burden. I know that is something you were very passionate talking about and saying that 10 trillion to debt repayment. That's for the next financial year. And it's a concept we always have. We're always paying debts and we're always getting into more debts. And you're saying that, listen, if you actually focus on trade and industry, you might not have as many issues up there. But you are even saying that 158.2 billion is not even enough for trade and industry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, getting a loan is not bad, really, because all rich people, rich countries have gone into loans.
Yes.
They get, you know, loans, but depends on how you use it.
Okay.
Uganda have been putting a lot of money in infrastructure. A lot, which is okay, because we need roads, we need
because a few years back that was our cry. We
exactly.
need better infrastructure.
Yeah. But we need to balance the infrastructure.
Okay.
Because today we have good roads. The debt burden is going up, and we have nowhere to get money to repay, because the economy is small. We are running a trade deficit every year, you know. So we need to balance. It's like when, even in your home, you need to see where to put the money, where you can be able to get some quick money to repay. So what I'm saying, we need to balance. We need to be able to say we put money in productive infrastructure, in irrigation. That's a productive infrastructure.
Which was a big something he hinted on very much in the last State of Nation address, which I'm sure we're going to get an update on now. But you're saying that you can't just tip bottles over as irrigation solutions.
No. We need bigger irrigation.
Yes.
We need mechanization. There was a scheme where tractors were in each village. We need stores. You know, we need silos, we need cold storages. That's production infrastructure. If some of this money go into that, for me, I think we can be able to repay. And then when you look at the loans, most of the money goes to those big infrastructure. Again, infrastructure is okay. But we need to say how much are we tapping as Ugandans into those infrastructure, in terms of employment, in terms of local content input, in terms of, for example, cement. If we are building all those dams, I would love to see so many factories, cement factories, supplying
to that, yes.
Maybe iron bar steel, supplying. So you are creating employment, although you are getting a loan, you know. So we need to think in terms of that, you know. But for the time being, we need to put some of that money we borrow into productive infrastructure. To make money and to create employment.
Speaking of money, there's value addition. It's a big conversation we've been having, especially with our big cash crop coffee, and we're saying that the Starbucks, we end up going to the States and drinking Starbucks, and you realize, hey, but this is...
I can't afford it. I can't afford Starbucks. I can't.
You can't afford Starbucks?
No.
So what do? You drink your coffee here in Uganda?
I take my coffee here. When I go there, I take tea. And then I tell them...
At least you're good. You're doing better for our market.
No, but that isn't our tea, by the way.
Yeah.
Even the way we market our tea, that's also another problem altogether.
But we're giving other people our coffee, and they're returning it back to us.
They blend it, they do
they add some value
they
and bring it back to us.
You know?
But it's not just even in coffee, by the way. It's not just coffee. So the question of value addition is very key.
Very key.
Yes.
Just take an example of maize. Now we have a bumper harvest. And so what's going to happen? Because also there is no minimum price. And we have been talking about this. It goes back to, we are liberalized, but there has to be a minimum price. That's why people are running away from agriculture, because you need to have some level of certainty. There has to be a minimum. We are not saying government has to cap the price of, for example, maize, but people need to know for planning purposes.
Yeah, and Jen, we actually had people on the ground telling us that I bring my produce to the market and I realize we are 4 people fine with maize, and this one has their price, I have my price. When you go to the next village, they have their price, and saying that
there are no grades. Have you ever had this is a first grade maize?
You just buy.
You just buy,
yes.
You know. And now, because there's going to be a bumper harvest, the price of maize is going to go down. The Kenyans are going to go directly to the farmers and buy and take across the border, then bring back. Then we are saying we have no animal feed, we don't have this, we don't have that, you know, and then we have no jobs, but the mills are empty, you know. So we need to link up the dots in our economy, you know, because at the end of the day, where we started from, there are no jobs, security. When people are poor, when you see all these kidnappings, people are poor. Because if you have a job, you know, you wake up, you have somewhere to go, you know. It decreases on security. Education, government needs money to finance its development, you know. So we need to link up the dots. You know, I was discussing at home that Minister of Trade and Industry is like that stomach. We don't think about it, you know. We don't. We think about our face, our what.
Yes.
But when you spend a day without eating, you can't talk,
the
you
stomach
can't
will
walk,
remind you. Yes.
You know, so Ministry of Trade and the economy, and maybe politics also, because they are linked, it's like that stomach. It makes things move.
Let me ask you, when we talk about trade and industry being, you're saying the key, if we focus on it, if we revive it, if we put our energy into it, it will solve our problems. You're saying unemployment and all of that.
You add on tourism
and
also.
Tourism.
Because
and
yesterday
we had the discussion
tourism
yes,
industry.
and yesterday actually Stephen and Simon were saying that they are now separate and they're still working, but of course everyone needs to work together. But are we saying that this trickles down to the average Ugandan with my small kataka?
It does.
Or are we looking at someone with acres and acres that is going to be able to produce to add to this economy?
It trickles down to my mother. Because that's why we need to add trade, industry, tourism, cooperatives. You know, cooperatives. Because, you know, you know, you cut your clothes, your coat, according to the clothes you have. Our people are peasant with those pieces of land.
That's what I was telling you, because they have the houses on the same kataka. They want to, you know, cultivate the same taka.
So that's the clothes we have, and we want to cut our coat. Because I hear some people that want to have large scale, you know, peasant agriculture can't work. That's what we have, we make it work. Unless we poison all those people and they die, you know, and we have large scale agriculture. But we need to be able to see how we link them up to production, to the markets. And it has ever been done. You know, it isn't rocket science. They used to have cooperatives, coffee, you know, and the standards were okay. For me, my home in Masaka, our courtyard, I grew up, part of the courtyard has cement. Because that's where they used to, to dry the coffee. And you find it in so many homes. People could have a courtyard which is cemented. The house isn't cemented because of standards. And they used to link up to a cooperative and then to a bigger market. And it can be done. It can be done. It can be done.
Let's talk about, Siatini has negotiations in there. And we're talking about trade negotiations. One of the recommendations you were saying is that these missions and the embassies we have, they should be able to also facilitate trade negotiations for us. What can they do? What are they able to do? And talk to us about just trade negotiations.
Okay, trade negotiations, because markets are negotiated. You can't get up and say, I'm sending things to...
I can't go and talk to Kenya as Flavia.
No, you can't. And you can't
Uganda
get up here
talks to Kenya.
To Kenya.
Yes.
And you can't get up here and say, I'm taking my okra to the EU. No. Markets are negotiated.
Yes.
Even for Kenya here, we negotiate in the ESC. You have heard about the rice wars, the sugar wars.
Yes,
you know, people go to the ESC
it's
to
not
say,
individuals.
You know, you go to the ESC and say, don't bring your sugar. You remember that, the sugar, you know, the Raida and all that. You know, politics was there. So markets are negotiated. But when you look at the budget, our Ministry of Trade budget for negotiation, sometimes it's non-existent, you know. Sometimes...
Are they not seeing the key reason for its
that's why they are giving 158.2 billion only. There are no negotiations, money for negotiations. But then also to go back to the missions.
Yes.
Missions also play a key role, you know, to sell Uganda, our country,
our capability,
tourism, our products. These are the coffee we have.
Yes.
So I don't know now in foreign affairs. Maybe when they come to talk to you, you ask them whether they still have
because I don't know if they're currently doing
attaches and commercial attaches. They are very, very important if we are to project Uganda. You know, tourism. You know, our coffee, you know, what we have, you know, they are very, very important.
Speaking of us being a supermarket, when you, even in these negotiations, I was asking yesterday the CEO of UTB, what is Uganda known for? And actually also likened the thing of supermarket, he said, Uganda is everything. If you're selling brand Uganda, you're selling Uganda has everything.
But you can't
That's
be
a disadvantage.
everything. You know, one time, I was way back, I was coming from Cape Town. And the driver, he was a white South African. He was asking, oh, where are you from? He said, I'm from Uganda. Yes. Ah, where is Uganda? You know those people used to say, I haven't been to Africa.
Africa.
Yeah, I haven't been to Africa. Uganda, what do you have?
Yes.
What do you sell? What's your economy, you know, based on?
What are you known for?
Yeah. And I said, coffee. Ah, coffee, really? I haven't seen your coffee. I said, Ethiopian coffee. Then I said tourism. You see, so we
must find our niche.
We have to find our niche, concentrate on it, and you know, a niche, you make it a niche, you make it an issue. By the way,
you make it
even if it's coffee.
We're not denying we have all the others that will be supportive, but we must sell ourselves
money. Exactly, we have to sell, and we have to reduce this trade deficit. Our trade deficit is almost half, what we import and what we export is half. That's why the trade deficit is going up every day.
We're running out of time. Perhaps, Jen, your thoughts as we go into the next financial year. The budget will be read. Maybe you've already seen, of course, the allocation for trade. You've already given your thoughts thinking that some of these sectors also need to work together, because you can work on infrastructure, put so much money in works and forget.
We're discussing here, remember, Flavia, 4.7 trillion. How much of it is staying in the economy here?
Yes.
We borrow this money, but it goes out. It's the Chinese, the labor, the machinery, the cement, the steel, everything, you know. So we need also to discuss that. It's very important.
Your parting shot, as we want.
My parting shot is that we need the Ministry of Trade, Industry, Tourism, to address the challenges we are having. Challenges of employment, challenges of health, because government needs money to finance its
and security,
development.
because you said because of unemployment, security also gets...
People are not happy. You know, it's so difficult to govern unhappy people. Hungry people. True. They say hungry people.
Angry people. Yes. Thank you so much, Jen Alunga from the Southern and East African Trade and Trade Information and Negotiations Institute, CIATINI. Thank you so much. We're talking about facilitating trade in Uganda. The hashtag is morning at NTV for more of your conversations. Good morning.